earthbending.
Avatar the Last Airbender? More like Avatar the one who didn't look hard enough. That feels painful to say. I'm sorry, Aang. Oh gosh, don't give me those eyes. Avatar the Last Airbender, the critically acclaimed Nickelodeon show from 2005, left an impact on a lot of us fans, wouldn't you agree? And one of the biggest emotional journeys in the show is the fact that Aang's family, friends, and loved ones were all killed by the Fire Nation while he was frozen during the 100-Year War. I mean, did you expect a fantastical kid show like this to deal with genocide? Well, what if I told you that Aang wasn't actually the last of the Air Nomads? What? Who? When? Where? Why? Well, grab some fire flakes, earthbend yourself a seat, and join me, my fellow scholars, as we dive into this adventurous Avatar theory. After fleeing from his responsibilities as Avatar, Aang got frozen in a giant glacier. Katara and Sokka found him years later, and together they started their journey for him to master all 4 elements. Although, given that Aang had been asleep for so long, one of the first stops was the Southern Air Temple, where he discovered the remains of his desecrated home. It was also there he found the skeletons of Fire Nation soldiers surrounding his old master Gyatso. You can't tell me this didn't traumatize you as a kid. Characters mostly reference the Airbenders as having been completely eradicated in the series, with other people even taking up residence in the empty temples after they had passed on. But why were they killed, you may ask? Well, prior to the 100-Year War, Fire Lord Sozin left Avatar Roku to die on an erupting volcano after he rejected Sozin's plan to take over the world. After Avatar Roku had passed, Sozin knew that a new Avatar would be born, and they would be an Airbender in the next cycle. The Avatar was the Fire Nation's biggest obstacle in global domination. As a result, Sozin plans to stage a huge attack on all the Air Nomads once Sozin's comet arrived and granted the Firebenders immense power, which would hopefully guarantee victory. The Council of Elders of the Southern Air Temple had predicted the imminent war, however, and chose to reveal to Aang that he was the Avatar at 12 years old, much younger than usual, so he could be trained to fight against this oncoming threat. However, as we know, because Aang would be uprooted from his pseudo-father figure, he ran away and was frozen for 100 years. The attack went through as planned, and even though the Air Nomads put up a good fight, they were ultimately defeated. And so, it's mostly inferred that the Airbenders died along with those attacks. But here's the question. How is it that the Fire Nation were able to kill every single Airbender by just attacking the air temples? Well, here's the answer. They didn't. How do we know this? Through the vastly underrated Dark Horse comics. Released in Nickelodeon magazine and later re-released in the Lost Adventures anthology, there is a small comic called Relics that takes place during Book 1, Water of the series. In this comic, Team Avatar come across a merchant selling an authentic Air Nomads necklace. The merchant directs him to a cave in the Earth Kingdom that houses many Air Nomad artifacts. Aang is overjoyed by finding them, but unfortunately, it was a trap. Admiral Zhao had laid this trap in hope of luring Aang in to capture him. Zhao references how Fire Lord Sozin did the same thing to lure in survivors of the attacks on the air temples. What this reveals is that there were survivors of the air temple attacks, and that some had begun to rally in the Earth Kingdom. Sozin knew this, so he laid traps like this to find and finish what he had started. This makes sense because the Air Nomads weren't complete hermits. They made impacts on the world before the 100-Year War, so it's not impossible to theorize that either some could have avoided the attacks while away from the temple or escaped the attacks altogether. You see, I don't seem like an insane person now, do I? And if this is true, then it's not impossible to believe that some of the Air Nomads avoided being trapped. And how would we know? The point was to disappear so the Fire Nation wouldn't find them. They wouldn't have done a good job if they were just gliding about, arrow tattoos loud and proud. Plus, it's not impossible that some could have even hidden in the Fire Nation, although it's not likely. Remember, Hama, an ex-Water Tribe prisoner, hid in a Fire Nation town and would have stayed that way if it wasn't for her blood-bending antics. You're starting to get it now, aren't you? So if we were to believe that some Air Nomads could have escaped the Fire Nation's grasp, that would mean they could have married, maybe even to people of other nations. And yeah, maybe their children could airbend. But it's not like they could have shared that fact. And remember, if Aang was to know any of these escaped Air Nomads, they would probably be dead by the time he woke up again. Remember, Earth King Bumi is like his only friend outside of Appa from when he was a kid who's still alive, and he's the outlier for being so old. And if so, no one would have recognized him, and they would have had to repress their culture to stay alive. It's likely that most families would have slowly lost their connection to the airbending culture. But wait, here's where I throw the curveball at ya. The Legend of Korra was the sequel series to The Last Airbender, following the Avatar after Aang, which was Korra. One of the biggest events in that series is the Harmonic Convergence event, which re-establishes the connection between the spirit world and the physical plane. As a result of this huge event, many people who didn't have bending powers before suddenly had them awakened, some even being airbenders. Now, at first glance, this seems entirely random, but follow me for a second. What if those new awakened airbenders were actually descendants of the original Air Nomads? Whoa! Wild, right? Did I just blow your mind? I can hear you hammering away on your keyboard already. But that can't be ScreenRant. Well, let me finish first, guys. Keep your pants on. To lay it all out, this theory attempts to connect the new airbenders of Korra's generation to the wiped-out Air Nomads of Aang's generation, proving that Aang wasn't the last airbender. We've already proved that some Air Nomads did survive the attacks through Nickelodeon's own comic, and it's not difficult to infer that some of those Air Nomads could have started cross-nation families. Families built from people of different nations became a big point in the Last Airbender Dark Horse sequel comics, which led to the founding of the United Republic of Nations, which we all know from Korra became a hub for benders of all shapes and sizes. So in order for this theory to work, we have to prove there is some connection between the people who receive the ability to bend and the Air Nomads. For this, it's good to remember that bending is a combination of genetics and spirituality. For most benders throughout the series, we can connect their bending powers to a parental figure or ancestor. If you are the child of a bending couple, that doesn't mean you'll get both or either of their powers. A good example is Aang's children, Tenzin who bends air, Kaya who bends water, and Bumi who doesn't bend at all. So it's sort of a dice throw as to which power you will get. But the thing is that bending also isn't entirely about genes. As we see with the likes of Toph, she's taught bending by the Badger Moles, much like how the original fire, air, and water benders were taught by the dragons, air bison, and the moon, respectively. The ability to control all four elements is actually linked to the soul of the Avatar being bonded with the spirit of light, Rava. It's inferred that most of the time, someone's bending is affected by their soul and connection to their chi paths. We see this linked to spirituality and energy bending, bending blocking, and the removal of bending throughout both The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. But most of the time, outside of the Avatar, people's bendings are linked to their heritage. It can skip a generation, but it's still there, and because the Harmonic Convergence event increased people's links to the spirit world, we can assume that the Harmonic Convergence event awakens the spiritual connection to their ancestors. Why did Aang's kid Bumi get airbending? Aang's original element instead of something random like firebending or earthbending, huh? This proves that the airbenders in Korra could actually be descendants of the original airbenders, proving that Aang was not the last airbender. We're sorry, Aang, you just didn't look hard enough. It still hurts to say. I'm sorry, please don't flame me in the comments.
As you can see, it is a game that requires great patience.
And there you have it. Turns out Aang might have actually had some airbending buddies out there he didn't know about. What do you guys think about this theory? Is there any credence to it? Or are there any Avatar theories you want us to cover? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this every day. Thanks guys, and we'll catch you next time.